Tell me about the country that I'm trying to serve, when we got the right to freedom of speech but not the right to be heard. So who would listen in the slums when there's fights in the curb, and you stay inside your pretty little life in the burbs? Hostage of surveillance and medical payments, wage theft turning every office to slave ships while they sip champagne, watching riots all night, laughing at the peasants like they're betting on a dogfight. Thousands died of violence during random events, but 1 million children died to a man at a desk. You're getting mad and distressed, but you have to accept we're asking people for change when they don't have any sense. Thousands died of violence during random events, but 1 million children died to a man at a desk. You're getting mad and distressed, but you have to accept we're asking people for change when they don't have any sense. Thousands died of violence during random events, but 1 million children died to a man at a desk. You're getting mad and distressed, but you have to accept we're asking people for change when they don't have any sense. Publicize the straw man, turn it to a stunt dummy. Gag all the whistleblowers, bury them with hush money. Take every truth, twist and turn it like contortionists, disproportionate like funhouse mirrors, we're distorting it. Propaganda works cause it held us apart. Loan sharks eating white meat as well as the dark. Recession always makes men selfish at heart, so they'll let you be right while they're letting you starve. Ain't no getting through to Congress if they listen to the lobbyists. I think the truth is obvious, they're shitting on the populace. Kill them by the sword, put them into a sarcophagus, cause pens ain't shit unless they're getting you an audience.
Yeah. That's it. Some people might mistake me for an existential terrorist just cause I climb the edifice and never tell you what the lesson is. And now the pen is lifted off the page into the heavens. It's a rapture of the illest kind and you ain't ready, bitch. I spit the steadiest, pulling cords from shredded wrists. I never gave a shit enough to live to see the benefits. So fuck a feminist and fuck the truth. I'm never interested in a topic if it's any less than menacing. I hear the noises coming out of the crowd, yelling how the fuck does he survive with all that venom in his mouth. I'll have you spasming in anaphylaxis, and when the top dog drops I'll be ready to catch him. It's a fact, it's dangerous to run out of your lane. There was too much pressure so we had to blow his brains out. You look amazed, wow, was that a loose bowel? I just drop a log off in the garden of the great owl.
That's right. We fight. Like alright. Hey yo, presto change-o, everything's strange-o. So I fight back when I crafted the range flow. I've been ripping down mics since Genesis. Mr. McAllister wondering where Kevin is. I see enemies everywhere I'm panning. I'll stuff all I can into a cannon and shoot 'em high. Yo, a sky about to rip today. It's like I'm handing zombies out, dead giveaway. Yeah, they love messing with my mind state. You know I sing till it brings a divine shape. Unearthly, primordial. I see every move you make, I'm recording you. I'm the all-seeing eye and the hidden hand. My sanity flew away and it didn't land. Over here is a beer that I could chug. In grammar school selling grams of the good bud.
It's actually preposterous how trash MCs are confident. Fans perceive a crock of shit as masterpieces. Problem is, the massive beast that rocks the script is tragically the opposite. Seems the fans sleep in gas like anesthesiologists. You should know that I can drop an iller flow and rap so dope you choke, bitch. Hack up smoke, I'm potent like Newman Ultra, microscopic silico, volcanoconiosis. Cracking open domes quick, battle's over, go fig. Time to expound, I'm standing righteous and proud, spreading fire around like I'm a hydrogen cloud. Try to fight upon the mic, I'll smite you right in the ground. Battle rapping, dancing mad like I'm a nihilist clown. Call me the Joker, but I'm closer to a Kafka Palazzo. I grab the mic like Magicite and leave you dead in your foxholes. Paint you with your own blood and send the message along. So they'll be hunting red stripes like they're checking for Waldo. Look out, Wolverines, this is Sham Jam, kicking a couple of rhymes to promote myself on Bandcamp, and now I'm getting laughed at, but none of you can rap fast. Music and Audacity and programming and Flash, man. All these Unity games prove the kids are getting sloppy. I write physics from scratch and you're using rigid bodies. I cook and butter cookie cutter games like tamales, cause they reuse, refuse for making shitty copies. When I make a game, I always take the reins, drawing every animation frame by frame. Trigonometry accounts for the way it plays. Ask me about the code, I'll explain for days. Anyway, the game's about a kid with a secret. Wants to be a T-Rex but never never got the respect. It's partly coordination and it's partly reflex as you play. The size of the arm decreases. Made the shit so low, YOLO. Oh no, I'm mowing over teams on my own, bro. You don't know I got a chokehold on code art and a dope flow. This is what it's all about, so go big or go home. Should've given warning for the kids, we're all getting in line. Best of luck, mate, but I'm doubting yours is better than mine. I'ma end the verse cause I'm still working on the level design, and I'll be damned if 1 o'clock comes and I don't get it in time. I got the kind of intelligence fit for higher development. Flow and fly as a pelican with the might of an elephant. Y'all frightened to death of it cause I'm frying a skeleton. Biting to gelatin, biting rhymes is kind of irrelevant. Why you doubt my endowment? A mountain cause I scouted the sound until I found it a fountain of unlimited minutes of spitting precision. Written the sickest of rhyme schemes. Flicker a bit when I let it a bit and you're blinking a bit of the hype. When I'm sticking and flipping it double the rhyme. I fucking design, you're running behind. I'm tougher than mine, I'm sick of the tracks, spit of the facts, and rip it fast. And I'm keeping it steady. You think that you're ready? I'll bring a machete and slit your wrist to confetti. Cause what I've written is plenty deadly to interest of many. Like having kids in the 20s getting hit with the Chevy. The way I rock it moves to dominate, too hot for you to tolerate. Stomping through Titanic place to drop you in a lava lake. Bring direct currents that'll shock your face with copper plates. Validating rotten brains with thoughts you hate to contemplate.
It's a lo-fi warrior, hold my whole crate. I'm sorry if it bothers ya, I'm never gonna go away. You bring your caterer, debase your whole team while we're sitting sipping out the barrel, ain't about to break the seal. Wise ass, wise cracks and too much lean. All these other motherfuckers trying to realize their dreams are nothing more than some pipe hitting, ice picking bullshit. Device team assigned to erase my mind of fools in and out, back in the round, trying to creep up on the mound. Sneaking isn't easy when you're green around the mouth. 2-4 fist and I turn her to a sock puppet, training all the scum in the bottom of the bucket. The pill so veteran, neurotic pedestrian, telekinetic powers putting shame to 11 on my brain in the jaw. 8 dicks enlarged, the reason that your leader's got a pain in his horse. F-I-17 HDC, playing games with your soul, press X to redeem.
Press X to pay respect and get the fuck off my property. Honestly, I hate it when the game is just subconsciously a non-release from something that should help to break monotony. It's my own fault, I don't spend my cash responsibly. I'ma be upon the streets, focusing upon the beats. Normally I orchestrate a portion and be formally an introduction. Hi, my name is HDC, ain't nothing to fuck with. I am Soundbreaker, the ground shaker, the game player, the name taker, the earthquaker, the burn maker, the third layer in this track. I'm no faker, I throw players out with a trash.
Delivered into this dimension by establishing a sonic connection. Entered this harmonic prison through a prism that's refracting my reflection. So now I'm exacting vengeance on all those who lack repentance for the trash they put it forward, cause I'm bored of it. Electrons orbiting gas mask as a massive atom smashing together a quantum barrier, let me at them. These maggots are the missing link, we the proof of evolution. Core magnet savages need their DNA activated, that's the truth of it. We're moving into an Aquarian age, is scared to change. Confused to conclusions, refuse to be loose and stay in lanes. I'm bombing abominable automatons, dropping audible Josh is on a phenomenal phenotype. So you see the light, don't believe the hype, realize you experience genius when we breathe in mics. Freestyling better than the bars, it took you a week to write. Peep the frequency spikes, the vocalize, dreaming to open minds, conveniently bringing moments of meaning to broken lives.
The old evolution is cold, it's sterile, it's efficient, okay? And its manifestations are those of social adaptation. You're talking about parasitism, dominance, morality, okay? War, predation.
We started a dark land, living like Tarzan. A smart plan to bar yards and make greater walls stand. A scars gashed in hard sand, endless rows of farmland, acres of pater. Shouldn't shrink the tall man, but with less meat on his bones, he thought he needed a throne. Took to fighting other tribes, he wouldn't leave them alone. With domestic livestock that didn't need to be told, and domestic men ensured he wouldn't be overthrown. No more hunter-gatherers, put another man to work. Map the stars, grab the heart and nail it to a calendar. Trading done by travelers, any other man would serve anchor to a plot of land, all to have a manager. Agriculture led to a prototype metropolis. Nomads went extinct, so no one tried to copy it. Rug pulled out from below an idle populace, while farmers went to work but didn't know it's time to dominate. For the project, always mastering the challenges. Content, building additive extravagance. Conquest, leave the savages in bandages and and progress until we're bleeding from our calluses. Projects, always mastering the challenges. Content, building additive extravagance. Conquest, leave the savages and bandages in progress until we're bleeding from our calluses. Africa was colonized, force without compromise. Black and white roboticized, all the while Father Time ostracized all the tribes that wouldn't fall in line. White peasants felt empowered by the hegemonic lies. Monarchs decided they were making a change, so enslaving a race was viewed as saving with faith. Upon sailing away with greed ingrained in their brains, they started making a name for the triangular trade. Labor sugared cotton traders took and got to pass it on. Sheep wearing cotton, leaving affluenza camouflaged. If you have a job, it's to follow the hour hand of God. Get caught slacking off, you're beaten with a cattle prod. Pure tyrannical, puritanical men are worse off. A shame convinced idle hands are the devil's workshop. Never mind insignias and royal crests were burnt on. Branding was the price of an empire meant to serve God. Projects, always mastering the challenges. Content, building additive extravagance. Conquest, leave the savages and bandages in progress until we're bleeding from our calluses. Projects, always mastering the challenges. Content, building additive extravagance. Conquest, leave the savages and bandages in progress until we're bleeding from our calluses. Smog replaced sweat with the steam engine underway. Gotta pay rent with 16-hour shifts, underpaid. Punching in another day, working like a fucking slave. Mass production has a function, making men suffocate. Depression ends with weapons given to the poor and medical experiments on prisoners of war. IBM had two-way hinges on its doors, sending holleriths machines for Jews living in a morgue. Monocropping fields started tarnishing a fertile ground. Demands for meat led to poor conditions for a herd of cows, stuck inside of cages too small for them to turn around. Blood given back to the young for them to slurp it down. Computers raised the standard of expected contribution. Cell phones gave employers methods of intrusion. People died trying to hold their breath for a solution for a culture running off a cliff intrepid in its new fit. For the projects, always mastering the challenges. Content, building additive extravagance. Conquest, leave the savages and bandages in progress until we're bleeding from our calluses. Projects, always mastering the challenges. Content, building additive extravagance. Conquest, leave the savages and bandages in progress until we're bleeding from our calluses.
AnnoDominationCom.
They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, but I'm asking why I have to try when the sentiment is only true for half the time. It's so rehearsed like hiring pantomimes to laugh and cry. Feet nailed down to the floor beneath the blackened sky. Entombed in thought like being buried in a pyramid, and far too familiar with the feeling to be fearing it. Memories is empty calories with no experience, so you can try your best, but you're winding up back here again. After years I quit asking for hope, but I still beg every time I'm shoved back in the hole. And over time I've started doubting what a person is worth, although I never stabbed a back that wasn't turned on me first. I know the past is out of reach like an overpass. Time moves forward, but mentally I'm going back, getting pulled in half as a result of being so attached. Negatives develop in the dark through the photographs. Hate to say this, but I'm made to face it. Trading places is your favorite way to make replacements when you've made acquaintance. So the knee-jerk response is to remember pain and anguish. When affection is a sign of parting in your native language, they say truth is something that you need to address. But when the facts are ugly, honesty is seen as a threat. So be at peace with the mess and lose the people's respect. But until you're under skin deep's what you get. So never give a pitiful entity such a cheap offer, choking on conditional empathy like seawater. It's like every year I go around a junction, and the ones I meet along the way aren't allowed through customs. I can see it again. Someone leaves in the end when perseverance costs more than what we can expend. If there's no way forward, then I need to pretend. So I'm living in the past just to be with a friend. I got a resume and wingdings, a network on MySpace, coded for an interview and wrote it in white space. Peanut butter nightshade, spread it on sideways, nocturnal cycle like I'm living in an ice age. High died down like I'm thirsty for an old Coke. Used to laugh at dark humor, now it's just an old joke. Good for appearances like Windy City's Gold Coast. I swear I'm optimistic, now just help me with this gold post. You see my hand, say I'm bleeding like an injury. Put my cards down and said your evil eye is killing me. Hard to appreciate being treated like I'm infantry, but nice to know that dying is a legal liability. I get empowerment's part of your core message. TED Talks teach more lessons of forced efforts. Thanks for the concern, but I'd rather store credit and a possible appointment to the nearest north exit. Intercept the internet and disconnect the player. I'll be on the ether, you pricks will catch me later. Tool assisted run, cartridge loaded for a playthrough. They say you kill the one you love, be grateful that I hate you. Before you analyze or play the ruthless martyr, let's play a game called Concerned Friend or Abusive Partner. You know what really miss you? I think you're being selfish. Can't you think of times in your life when you haven't felt this? The education camps where they're locking you down inside a hospital gown with loads of doctors around. Ad hominem or said it is for knocking you out. Disillusion from the padded walls, softening sound. You covered your ears and then you sold it as tough love. Clearing out your pockets and emotional slush funds. You underestimated I'm a solipsistic nervous wreck that confidently flunked every soul that took the Turing test. Really though, thanks for trying, you did your best. And in time I'll let all this pass. You didn't get it? I just spelled it out on Morse code. Contempt hidden right in plain sight like a forced choke. Insolent bitch, I'm more than a pitiful kid. Splitting his wrist, I'm the critical wit of a cynical prick. Getting his kicks, digging a ditch from ethereal bliss to a cryptic abyss. Spit all the quips and ambivalent tips. You can keep the cake, but I'm snuffing the candle and getting a wish. I'll put arsenic and love in the recipe. With friends is a juvenile form of an enemy. I'm caustic at heart, and you're a novelty charm. So if I treat you like stupid, then you probably are. Looks like death trumps choice and autonomy. Liberty or death, they don't mean anything you got from me. Suicide prevention as a part of their philosophy. Well, I've been sitting here like shit, I think they're on to me.
I used to be encased in the arms of my one love. Now I just struggle with the absence of her one touch. And I'm left with a photo frame, and I stare into the moment as I think of the name of the one who made the mistake of being careless. Bullet to her head, her body on the pavement. The aftermath summons a pain, the sum of the strain on myself takes me to another place. It wasn't her time, no it wasn't her time. They took away her life, now what do I do with mine? There isn't much left, I can only see a face. The image of the one who brought upon this change. I gotta pay a visit, it's something I deserve. A trip to his family, I gotta get a turn. Strike on the match, nah, he would never learn. K-Wing, poison tongue, let him burn.
I met a girl who just started university. She mentioned that she lost her brother too early. Never got to meet him and he'll never do a verse with me. But as for the story, well, I know it perfectly. The story goes a monster came and dragged him down a hole where he struggled and he drowned in a blackened cloud of smoke, with lights going dim while grabbing out for hope. And I know the beast cause I felt its hands around my throat. It circles in close from every side on the horizon. Smell of death approaching till you're hiding all the time. And the outer world falls away, sliding out of mind until you're left inside a limbo that you're trying to survive. And then you see the bloody maw, morbid and it's rotten. Pungent breath stinking of the corpses of the fallen. Repulsive yet comforting to soar down to the bottom. But you still try to run instead of forfeiting the problems.
Amelia first noticed it on Ben's urn. It bubbled from the lid and dribbled down the painted porcelain, viscous, musty, and pitch black against the blue floral pattern. She ignored it, of course. Hallucinations were a common symptom of grief, and Ben's family had more than enough on their minds without her delusions being shoved onto them. Ben's mother was speaking now, in sentences that flaked apart into meaningless words. Amelia had always liked her. Helen always told the best stories. She wanted to listen to her, to the rest of Ben's family too, but all she could hear was noise. It was as if she were trapped inside a shell of herself and only muffled sounds came through. The stench of musk grew stronger, passing effortlessly through the shell and transfixing Amelia with terror. The sight of the liquid assaulted her with vivid images of how she'd found her boyfriend. Throat clawed open, his fingernails guilty with blood, sheets soaked in red. There was no physical resemblance between the two images, no logic to connect a mutilated corpse with the black sludge, but to her the resemblance was undeniable. The goo reached the flowers laid out on the table, and as it flowed closer, Amelia heard a persistent chittering noise bubbling from the smooth blackness. She excused herself from the funeral reception, bile rising in her throat as she turned away. The image of petals shriveling and browning was still etched into her skull as her white knuckles clutched the toilet. From then on, Amelia noticed the gunk at work and occasionally in her apartment. It hid in corners and crevices, puddled up where grime and dust accumulated. On bad days, when she talked with other dance instructors, it bubbled around the corners of their mouths. She couldn't bring herself to mention it. She couldn't even make eye contact, gaze darting away as she fidgeted and tried to cut the conversation short. Amelia couldn't remember what any of them said, anyway. Food smelled rank and tasted about the same. Often she looked away from her meal for a mere instant, only for it to be coated in the black syrup the moment she looked back. Up close, Amelia was able to study the goop with a morbid curiosity. The dark surface swelled and contracted as though it were breathing. The sound was much clearer, too. Fits of mechanical whispering, like air bubbles rising to the surface. But however long she looked, it only took a few pokes with a fork for her to realize that what was on her plate was completely inedible. She soon lost track of how many platefuls she had been scraping into the trash. Dance had always been her escape. She'd practiced religiously after her dog died when she was 8, when she dropped out of college, even created her own routine using crutches when she'd fractured her fibula practicing capoeira 2 years back. B-girling took her to a private place where thoughts dissolved in the immutable materialism of reeling limbs. But for the first time in her life, Amelia felt defenseless. Doubts pierced straight through the kinetic vortex that had always protected her. Her body fell short of words. Technique felt forced during workshops. Amelia's body lied, and the sight of her students mirroring those lies taunted her. She'd never realized how lonely the emptiness of the studio could be, or how critical she felt watching herself in the mirror. No one commented on the weight she was losing, but it seemed absurd to think no one had noticed all the meals she'd skipped, especially with her stomach exposed all the time. Then again, she might not have noticed their concerns. In her state, living people were hardly more noticeable than the dead. The growing number of ignored calls on her phone could attest to that. Amelia found herself daydreaming about being submerged in the liquid, drowning as it consumed her body and seduced her in a surreal daze. At night, the same visions jolted her awake in a cold sweat. Each day was a turbulent oscillation between bedsheets that were one person too cold, and the endless days passing before reddened, weary eyes. As the days slipped by, the tar took on a life of its own, separate from Ben. Memories slowly bled away, eclipsed by its looming shadow. The D&D session where they'd first met, the pun war that had lasted a solid month, Amelia's embarrassing attempts at playing guitar, and Ben's even more embarrassing attempt at a headspin. All of these faded in the distance, overwritten, gone. The dirty laundry Amelia had slept with had stopped smelling like Ben. The cloying stink of tar had somehow taken over, finally convincing her to throw it in the wash. Amelia wondered how small bits of sludge were able to devour abstract concepts like memories, hope, and desire. She found herself trapped in an alternate dimension where everything and nothing hurt, and the future was an empty desert stretching out to infinity. Amelia woke to the feeling of tar molding itself around her leg. It took a few seconds before the penetrating cold nudged her out of her grogginess, then an instant of panic as she scrabbled backward toward the head of the bed. The tar clung to the sheets, anchoring her as she tried to kick, but lacking the leverage to get away. Only when she gripped her headboard was she able to pull herself free from the bulk of the mass, but by then the residue was creeping up her thighs. The tar was cold to the touch, penetrating deep and chilling her to the bone. The effect was not unlike Novocaine, though under the dull numbing was a sensation of skin and muscle eroding as the virulent solution ate away at her tissue. It wasn't painful, but her body's instincts screamed to her that she was dying. Amelia wanted to brace her hands against the muck and slew it from her body, but intuition warned her it would only travel up her arms as well. So she sat in her bed, recoiling from the goo trapping her with its viscosity and consuming her torso. When it began creeping up her neck, Amelia's hands instantly flew up to resist it, digging her nails desperately into her skin to peel off as much as possible. She wanted to scream, but the immense weight on her stomach and contracting around her throat prevented her from drawing in a full breath. Just as she felt the sting of her nails flaying her skin, the image of Ben's bloodied corpse flooded her mind, and the sudden realization forced her to stop clawing at herself. With her neck now exposed, the caustic ooze burned ruthlessly against raw skin, climbing unimpeded toward her chin. Amelia wailed in desperation, thrashing side to side, but the tar only pressed onward toward her mouth, which she clamped shut for fear of it going down her throat. With all of her strength, Amelia flung her leg toward the edge of the bed, trying to roll onto the floor. Pressing her hip to the bed and kicking her leg over it had taken nearly a minute, slowed by the ropey gobs that clung to her tenaciously. The last thing she saw before the tar grew over her eyes was the open door to her bathroom, which she committed to memory moments before her vision went black. Maybe, just maybe, she could wash this stuff away. Panic erupted into full-fledged terror as the goo sank into her nostrils. The smell of filth and bitter cold made her inhale involuntarily, sucking it further into her body as her lungs screamed for oxygen. She could only imagine how she looked. A muddy, vaguely human-shaped mass oozing off of the mattress. The impact of her hitting the floor was slow and soft. Amelia didn't hear so much as feel the tar squelch beneath her as she landed, along with the crippling weight that landed on top of her. Amelia had a vague idea of what direction she was facing, but wasn't sure she could brace her arms against the floor, let alone crawl. More goop had clustered around her joints, making movement nearly impossible. Amelia's first attempt was met with failure. Her muscles had given out before she could push herself up, and the tar holding such a sinister grip over her body was slick against the hardwood floor, causing her to collapse as her arms slipped out from under her. She settled for bracing her forearms directly under her chest, working her torso side to side as she crawled toward where she imagined the bathroom to be. By now the tar was most of the way down her esophagus, pressing against her uvula and making her gag. Her body lurched involuntarily, muscles pulling against lungs filled with cement. Amelia feared she'd faint, from pain, exhaustion, asphyxiation, probably all three. Each planting of her forearm against the floor required conscious, coordinated movement that seemed to take a solid minute. Amelia thought she might even have been crawling in place, as the coating around her arms and legs made it impossible for her to feel herself moving forward. After what felt like hours, Amelia felt herself pushing against something she hoped was a wall. The presence of something solid against her gave her a brief moment of relief before she realized she might not be near the bathroom at all. Amelia forced her arm to the side, pawing blindly for the doorframe. After several minutes of desperate exploration, she found it and crawled again, aiming for the doorway. By now, she was at the brink of unconsciousness. Protracted panic, lack of air, and aching muscles were dragging her into an abyss that she couldn't fight any longer. Her body was sputtering, shutting down. When she thought she had no more strength left, her head bumped against the edge of the tub. She had to reach up and over the lip to confirm its shape, but it was definitely there. Legs writhing in slow motion, Amelia kicked until her right leg caught the edge of the toilet, just between the floor and the base, and with that she was able to propel herself up and into the tub. Finding the faucet was harder than she expected. She knew the side it was on, but reaching up was especially painful on her shoulder and required her to dislodge her upper arm from the thickest part of the goop covering her. Amelia was thankful that once her fingers closed on the handle of the faucet, she was able to use gravity to her advantage and pull it down all the way. For a long moment, all she felt was pressure and a faint heat. It took several seconds before the water broke through the tar and splashed against her skin. The scalding water was torture to her freezing body, but she forced her hands against the downpour long enough to free them anyway. Her first instinct was to pull the stuff off of her face, but she settled for the arms first, freeing her upper body and allowing her to clean the rest more easily. Clearing her eyes and nose was straightforward, but did nothing to clear her airway. It wasn't until she leaned over and began vomiting up the material that the worst of the pressure began to lift from her abdomen. Her diaphragm felt tender and bruised from her repeatedly gagging, but the need to breathe pushed her to keep expelling the seemingly inexhaustible sludge. Amelia's first breath came as a pathetic sob, her body shuddering with new life, and although she'd wiped her eyes clean minutes earlier, only now did she become aware of the dark bathroom and murky liquid running down the drain. With exhaustion winning over, Amelia pulled the diverter on the faucet before collapsing backward onto the porcelain, streaming water from the shower head now working away at the remaining muck. Amelia fell unconscious almost instantly. The first thing Amelia was aware of was the ache, as though her entire body had been beaten by a baseball bat. Her limbs felt ancient, frail, and when she tried to sit up, she felt her wrinkles pressing against the tub from lying under the water all night. The shower was still running, flooding the bathroom as she hadn't drawn the shower curtain. Amelia picked herself up gingerly, turned off the water, and stepped out onto the sopping bath mat. Dark smudges streaked her body as well as the floor, where the water had mixed and turned the filmy gray of fetid pond water. Amelia ignored the smears, taking her towel from the bar and stepping out into her bedroom, slowly so as not to slip. She crawled onto her bed and only there began to dry herself off. The sheets were a mess of gray residue. Only one small corner of the top sheet was still clean, and Amelia perched on it delicately as she patted her legs with the towel. Alive didn't feel like the right word, but she was intact. Amelia touched her fingers to the raw marks she'd made along her throat. For the first time in weeks, she was able to picture Ben clearly. She wondered how long he'd fought this monster before succumbing to its irresistible force. How many times had she walked right past it, oblivious as it stalked him? Beyond a shadow of a doubt, Amelia knew that the tar would return. Maybe in a day, maybe in a month, but certainty dampened the fear. It didn't matter how many times she cheated death. The tar was coming back, and it was going to kill her. Her fate already sealed, there was nothing left for her to hold on to. All that remained in the empty cavity where anxiety had exhausted itself was a wretched seed of dread, waiting to be watered by the cold blackness.